rise.
Mining boom, BHP and Rio to throw $4 billion at the Escondida mine after a big boost to expected reserves there.
This is First Business.
Take you live to the nation's capital. TWU National Secretary Tony Sheldon is set to make a statement on the ongoing Qantas dispute.
From Alan Joyce and the continuing damaging of the brand's name and him calling it victory. The only victory that Alan Joyce has had in the Qantas board is actually for militant employers, and there is a need for new legislation to deal with the militancy of these employers that have been empowered by Alan Joyce's and the Qantas board's decision to crush the aspirations of 90,000 passengers and 32,000 hard-working Qantas employees that are proud of the brand but not proud of their executive. What we've seen is Alan Joyce now being hailed across the country as the man who brought militancy for employers back into the language of the Australian industrial relations. There's a need for new legislation to deal with this ferocious appetite that employers have got to break Australian jobs, outsource them overseas, and to undercut decent, hard-working Australians that are making large profits for powerful companies, only to see those profits going into the pocket of many of the executives. It becomes quite clear, the announcement just recently by Alan Joyce, that if he has to pay Thai flight attendants that he pays as little as $400 a month Australian wages and conditions when they work in this country, that he's threatened to close down the airline in Darwin and in Cairns. Well, that's standover tactics by Alan Joyce should not be allowed to stand. That militancy from employers should be stood up against, and legislation has to be enacted to turn around and make sure companies like Qantas are held to account. Right for questions.
What do you mean by militant employees? Qantas says that those
employers
didn't do the
employers.
Oh, sorry. Well, Qantas says that those who didn't do the strike, or the last recent strikes before the lockout, that they threatened other workers. So hasn't there been some militancy on the side of the employees too?
Yeah, we've had a series of false, malicious allegations by Qantas against 32,000 families that make this company so great. There has not been one scrap of evidence. There has been not one investigation from the police. There's only been rumour and innuendo from the Qantas board with allegations that are false, false and false again. The only standover tactics we've seen throughout this dispute is Qantas engaging multi-million-dollar campaigns from their legal teams and knocking on doors literally at midnight of their own employees, standing them down when they'd only taken less than 3 hours worth of industrial action last year. That's militancy by employers, and that's a vicious attack on Australians' industrial relations and rights within this country.
Is what you're saying that there is actually now a Joyce model to do this? Is what you're saying that the recent job cuts in the last couple of weeks is a la what Alan Joyce has done at Qantas?
Look, I think that's what's happened now, is that we've now got a Joyce-Qantas model on how you offshore, outsource jobs within this country and overseas with substantially lower rates of pay and conditions. And in the case of the Joyce-Qantas model, they're even saying that when Thai workers get paid as little as $400 a month to work within this country as flight attendants, that's okay, business as usual, because I've just given myself a 71% wage increase on a company that is extremely profitable. That's not a model that works in Australia. It's not a model that works for Australians, and certainly not a model that works for the entire community.
Mr. Sheldon, isn't this just how business works? I mean, if you're running a business, you've got to run it the most efficient way and most effectively as you can.
Look, first of all, the Australian workforce are proud to say that Qantas has made a profit every year since it was bequeathed by the Australian public without debt when Qantas was privatised. The workforce is proud of that profit. But also there was a requirement by legislation to make sure that Qantas was to remain Australian. They have a responsibility to the Australian community, set to them by Parliament, set to them by the community, and set by decent standards. And I've got to say this, the moral economy, ethics of business, should be something that we should all be rallying around, because businesses do and are required to operate ethically We've seen the unethical operations, whether it be Enron or whether it be Qantas bringing workers in at $400 a month from Thailand to do Australian jobs. That's unethical, and that should be repelled legislatively within this country.
Qantas, as an Australian company, didn't have to make a deal with other countries that if it was going to fly into Asia that it would have to employ some local staff. So arguably you could say that Qantas, with Jetstar's expansion into Asia, wasn't possible, and therefore extra Australian jobs within Jetstar International Inc. weren't possible without employing some.
This is about whether they're working Qantas.
We obviously have a few problems with that line, so that's not a line we can keep on. Unfortunately, that's Tony Sheldon from the union there, of course, responding to some comments we were talking about yesterday on the channel, Carsten, by Alan Joyce, saying that they'd kind of bounced back and the brand was almost, I guess he was suggesting, kind of stronger than ever. They'd kind of recovered from the grounding. It was the same, and I know you want to speak about this, it was the same incident where they grounded the plane, so that earned Alan Joyce top spot on a key list yesterday, wasn't it?
Well, that's right, inside the Australian. Yeah, so it kind of is double-edged, though, because then again, no sooner do you get that accolade kicking in than the unions see fit to grab their day in the sun or in the shade, as the case would be with the weather in Canberra at the moment. But yeah, we've had that rancor over grounded flights, the controversy over the entire fleet going nowhere last year, what that did to customer loyalty at a time competition, Virgin upping the ante as a result, and taking them on at their own game, really, putting on extra flights, getting passengers from A to B, and offering indeed to convert frequent flyer points across as well. So dangling every carrot possible to win market share, and who would blame them? And still, though, you're getting that reminder that Alan Joyce has a constant thorn in his side, which is a union base that, like it or not, distinguishes that airline from their low-cost Asian counterparts.
Yeah, but it was the gutsy call, basically, that won Alan Joyce, the most influential business leader on top of that list yesterday. So we move on at this point, and of course mention the SPY index this morning, just to go back to markets. And of course only 25 minutes away from the open on the Australian share market. The SPY will reset in a short time, but that's the latest